The limousine purred against the curb, a sleek black panther in the suburban twilight. Inside, the scent of corsages, hairspray, and youthful anticipation mingled with the cool leather of the seats. Ethan adjusted his tuxedo, the crisp fabric a suit of armor for the night ahead. At 17, the world was his to conquer. He was the captain of the football team, an honor roll student, and tonight, he was taking the girl everyone wanted to be, Chloe, to the senior prom. His future was a brightly lit highway stretching toward a horizon of scholarships and success. He glanced at the house, a grand colonial that stood as a monument to his father's achievements. Through the window, he could see his stepmother, Cassandra, moving with the liquid grace of a dancer. She was beautiful, almost ethereally so, with high cheekbones and eyes that held a universe of secrets. She had drifted into their lives 2 years after his mother's passing, a silent, elegant presence in the echoing halls of the house. His father, Julian, was as usual absent. A business trip to Singapore this time. Julian was a man made of ambition and tailored suits, a phantom who communicated through generous allowances and brief, transatlantic phone calls. The front door opened. Cassandra stood silhouetted in the warm light, a vision in a deep emerald gown that clung to her slender frame. "Your chariot awaits, handsome," she said, her voice a low, melodic hum. Ethan smiled. "How do I look?" "Like you're about to break a dozen hearts." She descended the steps, her gaze lingering on him. There was an unfamiliar intensity in her eyes, a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. It made him feel both older than his years and strangely unnerved. She straightened his bow tie, her fingers cool against his skin. "Have a wonderful time, Ethan. Tonight is a night you should remember forever." Her words would prove to be a chilling prophecy. The prom was a kaleidoscope of flashing lights, booming music, and teenage dreams. Ethan and Chloe were the undisputed king and queen of the night. They danced, they laughed, and for a few hours, the world felt perfect. He dropped Chloe off at her doorstep just after 2 a.m., sharing a sweet, lingering kiss under the porch light. The drive home was quiet, the adrenaline of the night slowly ebbing away, leaving a pleasant hum of contentment. When he walked into the house, the lights were dim. A single lamp cast a soft glow in the living room, illuminating Cassandra, who was curled on the sofa with a glass of wine. "You're up late," Ethan said, loosening his tie. "I couldn't sleep. I was waiting for you." She patted the cushion beside her. "Come. Tell me everything. Did you have fun?" He sank into the plush sofa, the exhaustion of the night finally catching up to him. He recounted the highlights, the dancing, the laughter, being crowned prom king. Cassandra listened intently, her eyes never leaving his face. "It sounds perfect," she whispered when he finished. She refilled her glass and then, to his surprise, poured a small amount into a second one and offered it to him. "A toast. To a perfect night," he hesitated. He wasn't supposed to drink, but it was prom night. A small sip wouldn't hurt. He took the glass. The wine was rich and dark, sliding down his throat with a warmth that spread through his chest. "Your father called," she said, her voice softer now, almost a murmur. "He won't be back for another week." "Of course not." The familiar sting of disappointment was dulled by the wine. "It's lonely in this big house," Cassandra continued, her gaze drifting around the opulent room. "Sometimes I feel like a ghost here." She moved closer, her scent, a mix of jasmine and wine, enveloping him. He felt a strange, dizzying sensation, a pleasant lethargy seeping into his limbs. The room seemed to tilt slightly. "You're so much like him," she whispered, tracing the line of his jaw with a fingertip. "The same strength. But your eyes are Kenda." Her face was very close now. He could see the flecks of gold in her dark irises. His mind felt foggy, his body heavy. He knew this was wrong, a line being irrevocably crossed, but he felt powerless to stop it. Her lips met his soft and tasting of wine. It wasn't like the sweet, innocent kiss he had shared with Chloe. This was something else entirely. A kiss steeped in sorrow, desperation, and a chilling, calculated purpose. He didn't remember much after that. Just fragmented images, the rustle of her dress, the feeling of being guided up the grand staircase, the cool sheets of the guest room bed. He was a passenger in his own body, adrift in a wine-induced haze. When he woke the next morning, the sun was streaming through the window, painfully bright. His head throbbed and his mouth was as dry as desert sand. He was alone. The events of the previous night came back to him in disjointed, shameful flashes. He felt a wave of nausea and self-loathing. What had he done? He stumbled out of the room and back to his own. Later that day, he saw Cassandra in the kitchen. She acted as if nothing had happened. She smiled her serene, distant smile and asked if he wanted breakfast. There was no mention of the shared wine, the kiss, or what followed. It was a secret, a ghost that now haunted the already cavernous space between them. Ethan tried to forget. He threw himself into preparing for finals and graduation, but the memory lingered, a stain on his conscience. And soon, something else began to surface. It started with a persistent fatigue that he chalked up to stress. Then came the night sweats, the swollen glands in his neck. He lost his appetite. His football coach remarked that he'd lost weight and looked pale. He assured everyone he was fine, just a summer flu he couldn't shake. By July, a month after graduation, he was undeniably sick. A strange rash had appeared on his chest, and a low-grade fever was his constant companion. He finally made an appointment with the family doctor, lying that he thought he had mono. Dr. Evans was a kind, fatherly man who had been Ethan's doctor since he was a child. After a thorough examination and a series of questions, he drew several vials of blood. "Well, run a full panel," Dr. Evans said, his expression unreadable. "We'll get to the bottom of this. The results should be back in a few days." The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. "Ethan," Dr. Evans's voice was grave. "I need you to come into the office, and I think it would be best if you brought a parent with you." A cold dread washed over him. "I can come alone. What is it?" "Just tell me. This isn't a conversation for the phone, son. Please. Come in tomorrow morning." That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He lay in bed, his body slick with sweat, his mind racing through a Rolodex of terrible possibilities. Cancer, leukemia the next morning. He sat in the sterile quiet of Dr. Evans's office. The doctor entered, holding a file, his face etched with a sorrow that terrified Ethan more than any diagnosis. "Ethan," he began, sitting down opposite him. "The tests came back. We found the reason you've been so ill." He paused, taking a deep breath. "Son, you've tested positive for HIV." The words didn't register at first. They were just sounds clinical and detached. HIV. That was something that happened to other people, in other places. Not to him, not to Ethan, the golden boy from the suburbs. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible. There must be a mistake. We ran the test twice to be certain." Dr. Evans said gently, "The viral load is quite high, which explains the severity of your symptoms. We need to start you on antiretroviral therapy immediately." The doctor's voice faded into a dull roar in Ethan's ears. His world, once a brightly lit highway, had crumbled into a dark, terrifying abyss. He thought back, his mind frantically trying to find a reason, an explanation. He had been careful. He and Chloe hadn't gone that far. There was no one else. And then, a memory surfaced through the fog of his panic. A memory of jasmine and wine, of a soft, desperate kiss, of a night shrouded in a haze of confusion and shame. Cassandra. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. It couldn't be. It was too monstrous, too unthinkable. But it was the only explanation. He stumbled out of the doctor's office in a daze, the prescription for his new life-saving, life-altering medication clutched in his hand. He drove home on autopilot, the world outside his car a blurry, meaningless panorama. He found Cassandra in the garden, tending to her roses with a pair of shears, the picture of serene domesticity. The sight of her, so calm, so beautiful, so untouched by the horror that was consuming him, ignited a rage in him, so profound it was almost blinding. "You," he said, his voice a raw, broken rasp. She turned, a placid smile on her face. "Ethan, you're home early." "Why?" The word was torn from his throat. Her smile faltered as she saw the look on his face. "What's wrong?" "I just came from the doctor." He took a step closer, his body trembling. "I'm sick, Cassandra. Very sick." She remained silent, her eyes wide, the garden shears dangling from her hand. "I have HIV." He spat the acronym like a curse. "And there's only one way I could have gotten it." The color drained from her face. The shears fell from her grasp, clattering on the stone path. She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw the placid mask crumble, revealing the raw, desperate pain beneath. "Ethan, she began, her voice barely a whisper. "You knew," he said, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. "You knew you had it, and you gave it to me. On purpose." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, her body shaking. "I never wanted to hurt you." "You didn't want to hurt me." His voice rose to a hysterical shout. "You've destroyed my life. Why? Why would you do this?" She sank to her knees amidst the roses, her beautiful dress brushing against the thorns. Her confession came out in a torrent of broken sobs, a story of betrayal and despair that was even more twisted than Ethan could have imagined. "It was your father," she cried, her face buried in her hands. "Julian. He gave it to me." Ethan stared at her, his mind reeling. "What are you talking about? He's not the man you think he is," she choked out. "He has another life. Other women. He was careless. He got infected, and he knew it. He knew it, and he didn't tell me. He gave me this death sentence, and he watched me get sick, and he did nothing." The world tilted on its axis. His father, the powerful, untouchable Julian. It was impossible. "I found his test results by accident," Cassandra continued, her voice ragged with grief. "Hidden in his safe. Dated 6 months before he even met me. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. He told me to be quiet. He said if I ever told anyone, he would destroy me. He said I was trapped." She looked up at him, her face a mask of tragedy. "I was so alone, so full of hate. He had taken everything from me. My health, my future. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to destroy the one thing he truly cared about." "Me," Ethan whispered, the horror dawning. "No," she sobbed. "Not you. His legacy, his name, his perfect son. I know it was monstrous. It was unforgivable. But I was crazy with grief and rage. I saw you that night, so full of life, with your whole future ahead of you. A future he had stolen from me. And I broke." Ethan backed away, stumbling over the stone path. The garden, once a place of beauty, now felt like a suffocating, thorny prison. The woman kneeling before him was not a monster. She was a victim, just like him. And the true monster, the source of all this pain, was his own father. The rage that had been directed at Cassandra now shifted, coalescing into a cold, hard knot of hatred aimed at the man who was supposed to protect him. "Julian," He had not only betrayed his wife, he had poisoned his own family, destroyed his own son. "He's coming home tomorrow," Ethan said, his voice devoid of all emotion. Cassandra looked up, her eyes wide with fear. "What are you going to do?" Ethan looked at the grand house, at the perfectly manicured lawn, at the life built on a foundation of lies and disease. "I'm going to welcome him home." What follows is a story of secrets, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of a father's sins. It's a difficult story to hear, but it's one that needs to be told. If you find value in what we do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps us continue to bring these important stories to light. And we'd like to hear from you in the comments. What would you have done in Ethan's position? The next 24 hours passed in a surreal haze. Ethan started his medication, the brightly colored pills a stark, daily reminder of his new reality. He and Cassandra moved through the house like two ghosts, bound by a shared, terrible secret. The rage inside him had cooled, settling into a chilling, methodical calm. He wasn't thinking about the future anymore. College, football, Chloe, all of it seemed like a life that belonged to someone else. His world had shrunk to a single point of focus, his father's return. Julian arrived the following evening. Striding into the house with his usual air of command, his suitcase rolling smoothly behind him. He looked tanned and rested, oblivious to the maelstrom of secrets that had torn his family apart in his absence. "Ethan, Cassandra, good to be home," he said, offering a perfunctory kiss to Cassandra's cheek and a brisk pat on Ethan's shoulder. He didn't notice Cassandra flinch at his touch. He didn't notice the dead, empty look in his son's eyes. "How was Singapore?" Cassandra asked, her voice a fragile whisper. "Profitable," Julian replied, loosening his tie. "The deal is closed. It's going to be a very good year for us." He beamed, a portrait of success. "We should celebrate. Let's open that bottle of champagne I was saving." "I think we should talk first," Ethan said, his voice quiet but firm. Julian raised an eyebrow, surprised by his son's tone. "Talk, can't it wait? I've just flown halfway around the world." "No," Ethan said. "It can't wait." The three of them gathered in the living room, the opulent space suddenly feeling like a courtroom. Julian sat in his favorite leather armchair, looking impatient. Cassandra stood by the fireplace, wringing her hands, while Ethan paced before them. "What's this all about, Ethan?" Julian asked, a hint of annoyance in his voice. "If it's about your allowance." "It's about my health," Ethan interrupted, his voice cutting through the air like glass. He stopped pacing and looked directly at his father. "I'm sick, Dad. I have HIV." The effect of his words was instantaneous. The color drained from Julian's face. His confident posture sagged. He stared at Ethan, his mouth slightly agape, for once in his life, speechless. "How?" Julian finally managed to stammer, his eyes darting from Ethan to Cassandra. "That's a very good question," Ethan said, his voice dripping with ice. "Why don't you tell me, Dad? Or better yet, why don't you tell Cassandra?" "Oh, wait!" "You already have." Julian's gaze locked onto Cassandra, and the shock in his eyes was replaced by a look of pure fury. "You told him?" he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper. "He deserved to know the truth," Cassandra replied, her voice trembling but defiant. "What truth?" Ethan demanded, his calm demeanor beginning to crack. "What is she talking about, Dad?" Julian stood up, his composure completely shattered. He pointed a shaking finger at Cassandra. "This is her fault. She's a vindictive, hysterical woman. She's trying to poison you against me. Is it her fault that you have a safe full of secrets?" Ethan shot back. Is it her fault that you knew you were positive long before you even met her? Is it her fault that you infected her and then threatened her into silence? Julian staggered back as if struck. He looked at his son, at the cold, hard accusation in his eyes, and he knew he was cornered. The lies had run out. I made a mistake, he stammered. A long time ago. I was going to tell her. When? Ethan's voice rose to a shout. When were you going to tell her, Dad? After she got sick? After she almost died? Or were you just going to let her waste away while you flew around the world closing deals? You don't understand, Julian pleaded, his voice cracking. My reputation, the business, a scandal like this would have ruined us. Was, Ethan laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You mean it would have ruined you? You sacrificed her. You sacrificed me. For what? For money? For your precious reputation. He picked up a framed photograph from the mantelpiece. A picture of the three of them, smiling for the camera on a family vacation. A perfect, happy family. A lie. Everything in this house is a lie, Ethan said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. He looked at his father, at the man who had given him life and then condemned him to a life sentence. The rage, the pain, the sense of utter betrayal coalesced into a single, blinding impulse. He hurled the photograph across the room. It shattered against the wall, the sound echoing the shattering of their lives. You're not my father, Ethan said, his body shaking with a fury he had never known. You're a monster. Julian stared at his son, his face a mixture of fear and disbelief. He had always been in control, had always been able to manage any situation, any person. But he had no control here. He had lost his son. What happened next was a blur of motion and raw emotion. Julian, desperate to regain control, lunged for Ethan, perhaps to restrain him, perhaps to strike him. Ethan, fueled by a year's worth of suppressed anger and grief, met him head-on. The two men grappled, their struggle a clumsy, brutal dance of recrimination and pain. They crashed into a heavy oak table, sending a vase of flowers to the floor. Cassandra screamed, a high, thin sound of terror. They fell to the floor, Julian's larger frame pinning Ethan beneath him. Julian's face was contorted with rage. You ungrateful boy, he snarled, his hands closing around Ethan's throat. I gave you everything. Ethan's vision began to swim. He clawed at his father's hands, but Julian's grip was like iron. He was going to die. Here, in this house of lies, at the hands of the man who had already killed his future. His flailing hand hit something hard and metallic on the floor. The heavy brass base of the lamp that had been knocked from the table. Without thinking, he gripped it. It felt heavy, solid in his hand. A weapon. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, he swung. The lamp base connected with the side of Julian's head with a sickening thud. Julian's grip loosened. A look of stunned surprise crossed his face. He touched his temple, his fingers coming away wet with blood. He looked at his son, his eyes wide with a mixture of pain and dawning horror. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He swayed for a moment, and then collapsed sideways onto the floor. Silence descended on the room, thick and suffocating, broken only by Ethan's ragged gasps for air. He lay on the floor, the brass lamp base still clutched in his hand, staring at his father's still form. Cassandra was frozen by the fireplace, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. A dark pool of blood was beginning to spread on the expensive Persian rug from beneath Julian's head. Ethan had not just welcomed his father home. He had delivered a final, brutal judgment. The aftermath was chaos. It was Cassandra who finally broke the stunned silence, her scream tearing through the house. She was the one who called 911, her voice a hysterical, broken whisper. My husband, my son, there's been a terrible accident. When the police and paramedics arrived, they found a scene of carnage. Julian was pronounced dead at the scene from blunt force trauma to the head. Ethan, covered in his father's blood, was sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth, mumbling incoherently. He offered no resistance when they took the lamp base from his hand and led him away in handcuffs. The story that unfolded in the subsequent investigation and trial captivated the nation. It was a sordid tale of wealth, infidelity, and deadly secrets. Cassandra's testimony was crucial. She told the court everything about Julian's infidelity, his HIV status, his threats, and her own desperate, unforgivable act of infecting Ethan. The defense argued that Ethan had acted in a state of extreme emotional distress. A young man pushed beyond the brink by the devastating revelation of his father's betrayal and his own diagnosis. They painted a picture of a patriarch who had ruled his family with secrets and lies, a man whose actions were the direct cause of the tragic events. The prosecution portrayed Ethan as a cold-blooded killer who had murdered his father in a fit of rage. In the end, the jury found Ethan guilty of manslaughter, not murder. The judge, taking into account the extreme mitigating circumstances, sentenced him to 10 years in a state correctional facility. Cassandra, for her role in knowingly infecting Ethan, was charged with aggravated assault and received a sentence of 5 years. The grand house was sold, its contents auctioned off. The monument to Julian's success was dismantled, its secrets laid bare for the world to see. This tragic story serves as a powerful and devastating reminder of several crucial lessons. First, the destructive power of secrets and lies within a family is immeasurable. Julian's decision to hide his HIV status, born from a desire to protect his reputation, created a toxic environment of deceit that ultimately led to the destruction of everyone he claimed to love. Honesty and open communication, especially regarding health, are not just matters of courtesy. They are fundamental to building trust and protecting the well-being of our partners and family members. Second, this story highlights the tragic consequences of revenge. Cassandra, a victim of her husband's profound betrayal, allowed her pain and rage to fester into a monstrous act against an innocent. While her suffering was real, her choice to inflict that same suffering on Ethan demonstrates how the cycle of violence and trauma can perpetuate itself, turning victims into perpetrators and creating new, innocent victims in the process. Seeking help, whether through therapy, support groups, or trusted friends, is a critical step in processing trauma and breaking free from the desire for vengeance. Finally, this case underscores the importance of empathy and understanding in the face of unimaginable circumstances. While Ethan's actions were undeniably violent, the legal system ultimately recognized that he was a young man who had been subjected to an almost unbearable series of psychological blows. It reminds us that people are often more than their worst acts, and that context and motive are crucial in our understanding of justice. The lives of Ethan, Cassandra, and Julian are a testament to how quickly a perfect farce can crumble, revealing the darkness that can lie beneath. It is a call for integrity, for compassion, and for the courage to face the truth, no matter how painful it may be. Thank you for joining us for this difficult but important story. If you or someone you know is dealing with the issues raised in this video, please know that there is help available. We encourage you to share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below, and please, like and subscribe for more true crime stories that make us think.